All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Look, if you've ever felt that absolute sheer anxiety of a manual cluster update going completely sideways, you're in the right place. Today, we're outlining exactly how we're going to manage our clusters moving forward. We're talking absolute security and ironclad governance. Because let's face it, as we scale our engineering teams and our infrastructure, those old traditional ways of imperative Kubernetes management, they're just not going to cut it anymore. We need a system that's robust, heavily automated, and fundamentally secure by design. So today, we're walking through the architectural shift that's going to completely redefine our deployment lifecycle, and honestly, probably get us all a bit more sleep.
Picture this. It's 2 a.m. A critical incident just fired off. You drag yourself out of bed, pull up the logs, and our CI pipeline swears up and down that one specific commit was successfully deployed, right? But when you query the cluster directly, it's running a completely different image SHA. Suddenly, everybody's in the dark. Nobody actually knows what's running in production. Maybe somebody ran a manual hotfix directly in the terminal, or, I don't know, maybe a dev was testing something, used the notorious kubectl edit command, and just forgot to revert it. We've all been there, right? Chasing ghosts in the machine?
Well, this absolute nightmare scenario has a name: configuration drift. And it rears its ugly head whenever a team manages Kubernetes imperatively, with direct commands or pipeline push steps. It's totally invisible. It just silently accumulates over time, and eventually it causes these massive, cascading incidents that nobody can explain. Because when you rely on direct commands to manage your cluster state, you're relying on human memory. And human memory at 2 a.m. is, let's be real, absolutely terrible. Relying on perfect pipeline executions to maintain state in a complex system is just a recipe for disaster. So here's our game plan for cluster governance today, and exactly how we're going to permanently eliminate this drift and lock down our infrastructure. We'll start by unpacking the drift mystery. Then we'll look at the GitOps paradigm shift. After that, Argo CD and the diff view. Then automated enforcement. And finally, using the Git log as our audit trail. Okay, starting with section 1, the drift mystery. Now, take a look at this. This is a massive security revelation. By switching to a pull model, our CI pipeline no longer holds our cluster credentials. Think about how much that shrinks our attack surface. In a traditional push-based CI/CD setup, your pipeline literally needs the keys to the kingdom to push changes into Kubernetes. Those credentials just sit there in your CI tool, practically waiting to be compromised. But with a pull-based GitOps architecture, we install a software agent inside the cluster. That agent just quietly watches our Git repository and pulls the changes in. No credentials ever leave the cluster. From a governance and security standpoint, this is an absolute game changer for us. Moving right along to section 2, the GitOps paradigm shift. GitOps fundamentally dictates that our entire desired system state must be declared in Git, pulled by a software agent, and continuously reconciled to automatically correct any divergence. Let's break those 4 core principles down really quick. First, it's got to be declarative. We use YAML files to describe the exact end state we want, not imperative scripts detailing the journey to get there. Second, it's versioned and immutable. Git is our absolute undisputed system of record, period. Third, it's pulled automatically, which, like we just talked about, gives us that incredible security boost. And fourth, it's continuously reconciled. The agent doesn't just run a job once and go to sleep. It constantly checks what's in Git against what's actually running in the cluster.
All right, section 3, Argo CD and the diff view.
If you look closely at the Argo CD UI diff view right here, you're going to see the exact mystery from our 2 a.m. cold open solved instantly. Git wants one specific image SHA, but the cluster? It's running some rogue hotfix SHA. Argo CD flags this immediately as out of sync. And it doesn't just tell you there's a problem, it highlights the exact lines of YAML that are different. You don't ever have to guess what changed in production again. Argo CD literally serves the exact diff to you on a silver platter. So how does it do this? Well, instead of complex, fragile deployment scripts, we just define an application in YAML that tells Argo CD exactly which Git folder should dictate the state of which cluster namespace. This Argo CD application is basically just a Kubernetes custom resource. You're just telling it, hey, watch this specific Git honeybone, look inside this specific folder path, and whatever you find in there, apply it to the staging or production namespace. It creates this permanent, automated bridge directly between your source code and your infrastructure. And to actually scale this across our different environments, we're going to use customized overlays. This ensures our staging and production environments share a single base configuration with zero YAML duplication. Because think about it, without Customize, you'd end up copy-pasting deployment files for every single environment. And eventually, Inevitably, really, they would drift apart. As lead engineers, we absolutely hate repeating ourselves, right? So by using overlays, our base YAML defines the core application, and our production overlay simply patches in the production-specific details, like, say, bumping the replica count up to 6. One base, zero copy pasting, total environment separation. Which brings us to Section 4, automated enforcement. Now, identifying drift is great, but it's really only half the battle. Monitoring without enforcement just means you get a front row seat to watch your cluster drift in real time. We need Git to have actual teeth, so by enabling 2 specific settings, self-heal and prune, Argo CD automatically reverts any rogue manual changes and deletes any orphaned resources. This makes Git the undisputed boss of the cluster. If you remove a database service from Git, setting that prune flag to true ensures it is actually deleted from the cluster, so orphaned resources aren't just silently eating up compute and budget. And self-heal? That's the ultimate governance enforcer. If an engineer logs into the cluster and manually tweaks the configuration, Argo CD spots it and immediately overwrites it back to whatever Git says it should be. No exceptions. Let's trace this new workflow. The absolute most important thing to notice here, our CI pipeline never touches the cluster anymore. Here's how it goes. A developer merges a pull request. The CI pipeline runs its tests, builds the Docker image, pushes it to our registry, and then here is the magic part. It simply updates the text file, the image tag, inside our Git repository. It makes a Git commit. And that's it. The pipeline's job is done. Then, Argo CD detects that new Git commit, pulls the new configuration, and safely rolls out the pods. The separation of concerns here is absolute. As our engineering team scales up, we'll start using the app of apps pattern. This means you only ever run a manual kubectl apply once, and literally every subsequent service is managed entirely through Git PRs. When you're dealing with dozens of microservices, managing individual Argo CD applications by hand completely defeats the purpose. Instead, we create a single root application. This root app just sits there and watches a directory in Git that holds all the other application YAMLs. So to spin up a brand new microservice, a developer just drops a single YAML file into that directory via a pull request. Argo CD sees it, creates the new application, and bootstraps the entire service automatically. It completely empowers our devs to ship way faster without us ever sacrificing an ounce of governance. 3 minutes. That is literally all it takes for Argo CD to detect a rogue, out-of-band change to the cluster and automatically crush it, reverting everything back to the state declared in Git. See, Argo CD operates on this continuous polling cycle. It checks Git, it checks the API server, it compares them. If someone somehow bypassed our process and applied a manual hotfix directly to the cluster, within 3 minutes, Argo CD triggers its self-healing process. Bam! The manual change is wiped out, but Git state is restored, the cluster converges to the declared state no matter what any individual tries to do out of band. And finally, Section 5, Git log as audit trail. This level of automated enforcement completely transforms how we handle compliance. By adopting this GitOps methodology, we are replacing those clunky, cumbersome manual audit systems forever. Every single state change now has an author, a timestamp, and a reviewed PR permanently recorded in Git. So if an auditor comes knocking, you aren't hunting through old Slack logs or digging through messy, outdated spreadsheets. You literally just open your terminal and type git log. You see the exact commit, the dev who authored it, the exact time it was merged, the pull request discussion explaining why it was done, and the senior engineer who approved it. Git effectively becomes your ironclad, immutable audit system.
Think about the immense security and operational stability we gain by ensuring the cluster converges to match Git always and automatically. By fully adopting Argo CD and these GitOps principles, we are permanently closing off our clusters from external pushes, we're drastically reducing our attack surface, we're putting in place an automated mechanism that ruthlessly hunts down configuration drift and self-heals our infrastructure, and on top of all that, we are creating a perfect cryptographic audit trail for every single change that ever hits production. This isn't just installing a new tool. This is a fundamental, ground-up upgrade to how we sleep at night. So the only real question left is, are you ready to revoke those CI keys and make Git your absolute single source of truth?